said, let's talk a little bit about this anthology and if you guys are watching this or haven't picked it up, why you should get into it. So, if you are unaware, Magic in the Melanin, a Black fantasy anthology, is a collection of 14 short stories, all by Black authors, that features full page artwork by Black artists. And we also have an audiobook coming up, which is, you guessed it, by a Black narrator. The purpose of this anthology was to shine light on Black creators and to show that we are out here doing the thing and to create space that showcases us, celebrates us, loves on us. So all of the authors who contributed also have their own works and things. So if you do like any story, the anthology lets you know what type of story it is, as well as the author and their other works, so you can get into it. So this can be just a kickoff point if you are new to fantasy, or if you're deep in the fantasy trench holes, you're like, great, I have some new authors to check out. So that being said, let's start at the beginning.
Yes, we shall.
Why did we create this anthology? I talked on it a little bit, but aside from me having a crazy idea and jumping in the group chat and being like, hey, you know what'd be great? Why did you say yes? That is the better question.
I said yes because I thought it was a beautiful idea. I really liked the message behind it. I loved the idea of uplifting more Black fantasy authors and their stories, especially ones that we haven't heard so much like from in like the usual day-to-day, like when you're scrolling in social media and stuff like that. So I thought it was really cool to bring everybody together and then create this really unique book that I personally haven't seen anywhere else. So I think it was really exciting to just be a part of it. So I couldn't miss up the opportunity.
That's fair. And I'm really proud of this project that has come together because one of the things that I really wanted to do is, because this anthology, for anyone looking at this, is an adult fantasy anthology. And I want to make that clear because specifically when it comes to fantasy, you see a lot in the young adult space. You know, we're very familiar with like Blood at the Root and Legendborn and stories like that that get a lot of screen time, which is great. We love that. But also there are writers, Black authors out here writing stories with grown characters doing grown things. So this anthology is part of that showcase. And why don't we tell you guys a little bit about our stories, because I personally think they're kind of fun. We write completely different things. So just a heads up, I write more in the dark fantasy realm, and she writes fluffy, sunshiny romance.
Okay, hang on. We can't say fluffy, sunshiny because then we're misleading people.
She writes about Black mermaids, you guys.
This particular story was, yes, about Black mermaids. It was. It is it's about this little side character in my main series I will be debuting later this year. But it's about a princess of an empire on the eve of her wedding day, and it basically comes out that the guy is not that great, and everybody finds out the night before the wedding, and so then things happen.
Gets a little crazy. Gets a little wild.
Yeah, happens.
But it's got a happy ending, which is why I say she writes fluffy, sunshiny romance, whereas my dark fantasy story is about two middle-aged women, and hopefully you guys will get this reference, but have you guys heard the song Woman to Woman by Shirley Caesar? And it starts out, hello Shirley, this is Barbara. Hello Barbara, this is Shirley. And so I listened to that and I was like, oh, you know what'd be great? If Barbara and Shirley had to go on an adventure to defeat corrupt gods, and they just hate each other. So that's what my story is about. It's about two middle-aged women, Barbara and Shirley, going on an adventure to defeat these corrupt gods, and they have a shared apprentice, and they send him on a mission, and things go left. And
really quickly.
Very quickly. And it's about them having to work together for a greater good, despite all the things that are lining up. And they're just like, you know what? Par for the course. And our stories aren't the only ones like this. So in this anthology, not only do you have romantic fantasy, you have dark fantasy, you have horror, you have dystopian, you have portal fantasy. There are so many different types. And part of the mission behind the anthology was to help people recognize, especially because we're adults. I know we look young, but we're adults. And one of the things that happens in life is a lot of times you fall out of love with reading at some point, especially when you're young. And you get into all of these YA stories, and then you go to college, and then you stop reading for fun because you're reading for school, and then you become an adult, and then life hits you, and it's just like, I want to read again because I loved it, but I don't know what to get back into. And it's like, I liked fantasy, but all these characters are young. I'm not in high school anymore. My mom's not checking over my shoulder. So we wanted this to reintroduce people to a love of reading where we as Black people are centered in our existence, and fantasy doesn't have to be explained, or and racism is not touched on at all in any of these 14 stories. So you have like 450 pages of just pure fantasy, and that was really important to us. That said, we talked about why we did this. We talked about our stories. Let's take it a little wider. What made you start writing in the first place? Because your debut, like your book is getting ready to come out, so this is a little fresher for you and mine.
I know. Honestly, that's such a hard question to answer. Honestly, there's so many reasons. And it's kind of like what you said. I grew up loving to read. I was really, really into reading growing up. And then at some point, I started to fall out of love with it. And then one day I was just like, well, what if I just tried it? What would happen if I just did it? So then I started. And I would, I'm the kid in schools not paying attention to class because I'm sitting there writing when I shouldn't be, and
not admitting to being a bad student on the live stream.
Hey, that was me. It was me. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that's what I did. And it was just a way for me to just be able to express what I wanted to and in the way that I wanted to, and it made me happy doing it, so I just kept doing it.
I mean, I support that. For those of you who don't know me, one of the things that I do is I Marie Kondo everything in my life. Does it bring me joy? And if it doesn't, it has to go. But if it does, it has to stay, pour more time into it. So I 100% understand where you're coming from, where it's like, oh, this is kind of fun. I like this. I'm going to stick with it.
A whole new world.
Yeah, it's a whole new world. Okay, sorry. Let's pretend like I did not try to sing for you guys.
Yeah, that's what we do. We're going to apologize in advance. That's just...
Yes.
It comes out sometimes. We can't help that.
As for me, I started writing because, in case you haven't figured it out, I'm a little radical, you guys. So I was just like, where are all the Black people in the stories? And I was just like, I'm a Black person. I write stories. And then it just kind of grew from there. It started out like writing little like insignificant stories on my dad's laptop back when having a laptop was like a big shiny thing, right? It's like, ooh, I don't have to be in the living room? This is crazy. It started out on that, and then it just grew into like sharing my stories on Wattpad, which is different in 2025. But in the early 2000s, sharing my stories for free and having strangers read it and be like, oh, I really like this. I can't wait for the next chapter. I'm so excited for it. And I was just like, what? What is this feeling? Is this joy? And it just kind of kept going from there. And as an adult, it grew into, writing my first book, Keeping Promises, and then my first fantasy novel, We Are the Origin, and then after that, I never went back. I wrote one romance novel, and I was like, never again, Lord. Nothing but fantasy, and I really love the idea of being able to create your own world and your own system, and, exploring what Black characters move like when they aren't caught by these constructs of social and racial, rules that they have to follow, where I say that I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice. And I say that because it's like so many times as Black women, especially in America, you have to smile. You have to be nice. You can't be angry. You have to navigate the world a certain way in order for people not to perceive you a certain way. But in my books, I'm like, what if murder was an option? What does that look like? And it just kind of expands from there.
The answer is, it's really fun.
It's really fun. But I feel feel like fantasy gives you a space to explore things that you wouldn't normally be able to play with in real life without being, insane or an arsonist, which not good.
And escapism.
There we go, escapism. So.
I got you.
So, is that what brought you to fantasy? The escapism and the playing with the different aspects of it, or?
Yeah. Generally, I like magic. I've always loved magic, so it stemmed from magic. And you can't have magic in the normal world, at least not the magic in my head. So I decided fantasy because I could. And then I am a sucker for romance. I can't help it. So obviously they got mixed together. It is what it is.
I mean, that's fair. I love how wholesome you are. And you're like, I came because of the magic. And I'm like, I came because of the murder.
I am a very mythologically inclined kind of person.
But it is what it is. That's the beautiful thing about fantasy, and the beautiful thing about this anthology is that we all come to it for different reasons, and we all perceive it in a different way, and we all play with it in a different way, but it all comes together in something that is wholly and uniquely its own thing. But in the anthology, if you read it, and I think you should read it, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't gotten it for some reason, I think you should, specifically from Resist Booksellers, slight plug. When you read it, you see that these stories come together, even though we're following different types of fantasy from different authors who see and view things differently. It all comes together in this project, and it's just like, yeah, but it's still all very Black, and it's all very fun, and it's all very, it makes you think, and it makes you connect with the characters, and it makes you want to go deeper into this fantasy world and the different ones that are created. And not my story, but similar to Law, some of the authors, their short stories are offshoots of their main project. So you're very likely to find a world that in this anthology that you enjoy that is then followed up by a much bigger world that you can spend more time in, with more characters, more plots, more crazy systems and romance and
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
I want to know something.
Okay, go for it.
I want to know what your favorite part of doing this anthology was.
Oh, God. Okay, so I have to preface this answer with saying that in school, I was the problem. So group projects, not my thing at all. I was very much the person like, can I just do it by myself? Do I have to work with other people? Answer was usually yes, and it was a miserable experience, right? But I think my favorite part about this anthology is the fact that not only did we come together as a community to make this happen, because for those of you who don't know, I am also the founder of the Melanin Library, which is an online database of books written by Black authors. It's a free resource for any and everyone to use, and the purpose of founding it was just to make sure that Black authors are not hidden. We write these stories and we write these books, but sometimes as a Black reader, it's really hard to find those books, and it's hard to be like, oh, I want to read a romance, or I want to read a thriller, or I want to read a sci-fi, whatever. And you go to Amazon or you go to a bookstore, not Resist, because Resist is great at stocking Black books. Yeah. But but you go to bookstores and you find these books and you're kind of faced with the popular ones over and over again versus finding any real diversity. And so when I became an author, I founded the Melanin Library in the hopes of, one, I ain't gonna lie, I was being selfish. I was like, I want my book next to other Black authors, right? But I also want readers to be able to find these books and to find our community, right? And I want it to be easier for everyone. You shouldn't have to spend hours looking for a book just to find one that has representation that shows you living in this world, right? So part of doing this anthology was to support that endeavor, right? And so one of my favorite parts is that when we reached out to people, right? Because to be real, I knew you and Tatiana were going to be on board because y'all love me. I don't know why, but you do.
You're the best.
Reaching out to the other authors and asking like, hey, do you want to be a part of this anthology? And knowing that, hey, being like, we can't necessarily pay you, but the spirit's going to be there, and just having people say yes, and not only the authors, but having artists come to us and be like, hey, we see what you do, we hear what your mission is, and we see this project and we want to be a part of it. And it's just like, we don't want anything from it, we just want to give you art. That way this fantasy world that you guys are putting together and building and putting out for us, it's not just in imaginations, it's manifested, it's something physical. And I think what was so great is we got all this artwork and they so perfectly matched some of the stories. And fun fact, the artists had no idea what stories they were creating art for. We just said, create Black fantasy, whatever you think that is, send it to us and we'll put it in the book. And when you look through it and you go through the stories, you'll see that the artwork so perfectly matches up, and they had no idea what they were drawing, where it was going to go, if it would even end up in the anthology. So seeing the community come together and really like support what it is that we're doing, I love that part. And I also, my second favorite part, being done. Love that. Just having everything have come together and it's out in the world and it's a physical product that we can hold. That part as well.
Okay, I love that because you stole both my answers.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes.
Same brain cell.
It's honestly though, like the community aspect of creating this anthology was truly something beautiful to watch come together. Just having people seeking us out to be a part of this project. It was a beautiful thing and it made my heart full. So it was so exciting.
It is.
And now it's done, and thank goodness.
Yeah. So we got this question earlier. So if you guys are watching this on the live stream, filling you in because you should have been at the store. You should have been at the store. But one of the questions that we got when people were coming in was, how long did it take us to put this together? And at first I misunderstood the question because I was like, oh, writing the story took like a week. That part wasn't the hard part. But organizing everything, it took us like a year to get the idea together, reach out to authors, get the contracts together and the artwork, and go through everything, read the submissions. Ooh, the submission process.
That was a beast.
That was wild.
That was a beast. Tatiana held us down.
So shout out to Tatiana OB,
yes,
who is not with us today because she's in Texas, probably watching this and being like, what? They're talking about me.
Love you, Tatiana.
Hey, Tatiana. But she was really a core part of this team as well, reading all the submissions that came through and giving really constructive feedback and helping us refine the process. And it was a journey, which brings us to the question we get a lot. Do you think we'll do another anthology?
I mean, we already said we would.
We did.
I mean, despite how much hard work it was, despite how there were ups and downs, we wanted to pull our hair out at some point. You know,
Wanted to fight some people, not gonna lie.
We wanted to fight some people because, mind you, we're putting this whole anthology together as we're also doing our own separate projects on the side, and also just trying to survive in the world.
It's 2025 for anybody watching this in the future.
Yeah, so it was so much work, but it was just so worth it in the end.
It was.
And so I would absolutely do it again. Just maybe not this year, next year or something.
Oh, no, she's lying. Do not.
Hey, I said or something. That was ended with or something. There was nothing. She's not
going to put a timeline on that.
Or something.
But it was a learning curve, and we will definitely, if we do another one, there are a lot of things that we learned from this one that we will take with us. One being, we probably won't pick a year when all of us have multiple projects that we have coming out in the world.
That's a really good idea, actually.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we are all authors in our own right. So you are a debut author, which means your first book is being published this year. The debut book is the hardest book, because the debut book is it's like going into high school on your first day, you know? It's like that first day you're like, where do I go? What happens if I go into the wrong classroom? What happens if I don't make friends? What if people don't like me? You know, you have a lot of paranoia, versus after your first book, it's like going to high school on your first day your senior year. You're like, can't nobody tell me nothing. I'm just here to get in and get out.
Get in and get out real quick.
Like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing at this point.
Yes.
And so there's a lot that goes into it. So you have that. I can't speak on Tatiana's projects because they're her projects, but she's got like 8 projects going on behind the scenes.
There's so many.
So many.
Let's talk about yours.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's talk about the challenge you made for yourself. Let's just start with that.
Okay, so, and I made a challenge for myself that I was going to try to write 3 books in 6 months, which is very unhinged behavior, actually. But the first one came out 3 weeks ago.
It did.
It's called The Lady Widow, Death Among the Stars, and it's a sci-fi space opera novella. And it follows a grieving widow as she becomes an intergalactic bounty hunter to avenge the murder of her husband. So, first book is out, second book is underway. I am also going to be finishing the trilogy that I started. The first book, Where the Origin, is out. It's in the back if you guys want to, pick it up. And the first book is Where the Origin. Second book is We Are Dying Gods. And the third book is coming out in October. And I don't know what convinced me that this was a good idea to do all of this in the same year, but here we are. But I think the fun thing about this challenge and this anthology and everything is the fact that we got to do something together, and in coming together to make this, we met other authors. We got to know them in ways that we wouldn't have talked to them prior, and we got to get familiar with their work and their writing. So it wasn't just for the audience, it was for us. We got to read all of these authors and get to know them, get to know their work. They got to know us. We built a supportive community behind the scenes, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, it makes you kind of feel invincible, Black authors come together, it's like, wow, we're really dope, huh?
We are. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We
did that. So, we're really proud of this. Okay, we have questions from the audience. Front row.
I know this is Melanin, and since I have Melanin, there's some things that I should assume, but I just don't know the answer, so I'll just ask it straight out. Young adult, of course, is not my genre, but what did you mean when you said that you did not see yourself or Black individuals in that genre? Was it the book covers that you did not see yourself? Was the culture? Was it the language? I thought love and murder was universal. So how could it be Black or white?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question for the live stream. And the question from the audience was, love and murder are universal. So what does it mean to not see ourselves on the pages? And do you want to go first or want me to answer? Okay, so for me, it was more so having characters who have similar descriptions, dark skin, natural hair, afros, and the way that they move and navigate through the world, always being either like the sidekick or the best friend, or never being in the center of the story. One character that gets a lot of, gets talked about in this conversation is Bonnie Bennett from The Vampire Diaries. And I know you're shaking your head, so you might not know, but
I'm older than that genre, so.
It's a TV show, and essentially she's kind of like the poster child for this conversation because she's the one Black character on the show, and they do her dirty the entire series. She's the best friend. She doesn't get the love interest, and she dies at the end. I mean, it finished airing in like 2008.
Sorry.
So.
This is a very big conversation about Bonnie Bennett. It's infuriating.
Yeah. And so for me, when I say that, I mean the stories that I write. Yes, it's murder, right? But it's a Black girl who's doing it, and she has her own reasons and her own motivations, and she's not the best friend who has to have the problems. And her love interests are also Black, and her world is full of Black characters because another thing that's kind of prevalent in traditional publishing and just publishing in general in books is when you do have Black characters, a lot of times they are decentralized in their own stories. They are in predominantly white spaces and we all understand what code switching is. And so the entire book is kind of written from this perspective of she has on this mask or this certain way that she has to act in order to be perceived. And I'm very much a proponent of, I want to explore what these characters look like when they don't have to be anything but themselves. There is no mask, there is no code switching, there is no explanation for why they are in the spaces that they're taking up, you know? So that's really important to me. So that's something that I always advocate for in my books, in my writing. It's part of the reason why I started the Melanin Library, because I don't know how much time you spend online, but one of the common phrases is that Black people are not monolithic. And for me, I'm like, yes, absolutely, we are not. There are so many different experiences, and that is what the Melanin Library is for, because it's just like, yes, we are all Black, but we are all writing different types of experiences. Some of us are writing Black characters in white spaces. Some of us are writing Black characters in Black spaces. Some of us are writing Black characters with aliens and werewolves and vampires. You don't know, but whatever it is that you want, you can see your expressions and your colloquialisms and the way you talk and the way you interact with your family and the dynamics that you're familiar with on page. Because I was talking to an author, I'm rambling, sorry.
It's making perfect sense.
I was talking to an author recently on another panel, and she was talking about having an editor and how she had to go through several different editors to get her book published, because there's this concept of respect in Black culture where it's just like, even if somebody is talking to you left, if they are an elder, if they're older than you, you show them respect, even if you feel in all different types of ways on the inside, right? And she was talking about how with her editors, she had to go through, I think, 3 of them to find someone who understood that this is why her character is acting this way. This is why this character isn't lashing out or being disrespectful or still offering respect, even though she's getting none. It's just like, that's just a cultural thing, right? But for those of us nodding in the audience, it's like, we understand that. But sometimes little things like that get lost in the publishing world or get erased. And so I'm just a big proponent of like, let's not erase those things. Let's not erase, mother-daughter dynamics and how they work. Let's not erase having, a Black love interest. Let's not erase having friends who look and sound like you and y'all braiding each other's hair, or, the comfortable jiving back and forth that you can have between friends. Let's not get rid of that just because that's what someone else in the big machine says.
No, that was articulated perfectly, and something came to mind that reminded me of how important that is. It's because I'm like a big nerd, and I'm an avid reader, but I read tech journals, I read things that I'm interested in, and I never read novels until somebody gave me a novel of a woman who bought a city. She bought a small town, and that was the first. Her name was Beverly something.
Beverly Jenkins?
Yes.
I know
So
what you're talking about.
I
I've read that book.
For the first time to reading a novel is because I'm a businesswoman. At first I was like, that's foo-foo. I don't want to read that mush. But when I could relate to a Black woman buying a city, I was like, oh, I know what they're talking about. So now I see the example of what you're saying.
Absolutely. And
I could see myself as a businesswoman when normally all of the things that I read does not look like me.
exactly. And that is what we aim for. And I say we collectively, but definitely, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but.
Go ahead, you're already doing it. Say it all. She's all exactly right. Whatever she's saying, I agree.
But that's it. It's just seeing yourself. And, as Black readers, so many of us have read books most of our life that have characters that do not feature us. So it's not about having themes and stuff that we can't relate to, because we know how to be like, oh, this character is smart, or this character wears glasses, or this character is my age, or this character is acting the way that I would act. But, they don't look the way that I do, or they don't move the way that I do in every aspect. And so essentially not having to cherry pick aspects of yourself to find them reflected in a book is what I would like to see. And being able to depict that kind of fullness on page, I feel like, again, that's why I say I write books about Black girls who weren't all that nice. Because when I say that, I feel like Black women especially understand what that means. When it's like, you don't have to, I'm not saying she's mean, I'm not saying she's angry. I'm saying that she doesn't have to be nice and set aside her feelings in order to make anybody else feel comfortable. and the book is her being authentic to whoever she is, whether that be an assassin or a bounty hunter or an assassin. I think I've read a lot of assassins.
You do write a lot of assassins. You're switching it up a little bit with your other one. But,
But even then, constant warnings for all of my books. They come with graphic violence and murder, just so you know. But it's also love and like found family.
there's darkness and there's light and there's beautiful things and then
Because
a lot
Brandy
of people
and Jack
die.
are totally in love.
They're totally in love. They're so cute.
Yeah.
I love Brandy and Jack.
You do.
Yes.
And Carol and Marnie are in love.
Yes.
So, Carol and Marnie are coming up in a future project.
Shall not be named.
But yeah, so I feel like that was a ramble. Any other questions from the audience?
When you were a kid, young,
Mhm.
were you into writing then?
Yes, I was. Oh, I'm sorry. For everyone on the live stream, the question was, when I was a kid or when we were children, were we also writing at that point? I was. I remember my second grade free time. My writing time, I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a book for my mom, and it was about like monkeys, and I have no idea, but I spent weeks of free time just writing this little story, this little 2-page story, and drawing monkeys and stapling a cover together to hand to my mom. And I'm pretty sure she still has it somewhere. I don't know, it might have got lost in the movie. Let me not put words in her mouth. But it was really, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been writing since I was a child. Like I said, I was the terrible child, and I was writing during school. Don't do that. Don't be like me. Stay in school and do all the good things. But yeah, I've been writing ever since I was really, really young. And I didn't, unlike Chelsea, I didn't show anybody. Those were mine. those were for me. I didn't start showing people my writing until I was much older in years. I won't say how many older, but other than that, I show people a lot more now. But before, yeah, I was a very closed off kind of writer.
Yeah, but
And what is the queer perspective you mentioned before? That description. What vantage point is given to your writing from that perspective?
For me, I'm a person who came into my queer identity very late in life, and I really didn't know how to express that, nor did I really the books that I did find of it. Again, it didn't represent me or my thoughts or how I would do things or worldview or aspects or stuff like that, and so it would just be I want my story. So I just started writing.
Is that relationships,
It's usually relationship experiences, yes. How it can affect, it's usually just romantic relationships for me. I don't usually dive into the familial aspects of it. I'm sure I might at some point, but as of right now, I haven't.
I think that's the beautiful thing about not just fantasy, but any type of writing is you get the space where you can explore things in essentially what is a safe space of your own creation, where it's just what happens if this conversation goes this way? You can write it, or what happens if this character is supportive or not supportive, or if this, situation were to arise. You get a safe place to kind of test the waters, essentially. And if somebody else is going through things, it makes what you're going through seem minimal in comparison. It's well, at the very least, at least I don't have blood on my hands. I just have to make it through the rest of this week and be nice.
At least I didn't assassinate him.
Right. I didn't chop any heads off today, so I'm fine. I'm winning.
And what's even better is when other people read that and they're like, I get you.
I get
understand
it.
you.
Right. One of my favorite things is sneaking into book club discussions. And what I love about having a husband is he can just slide in. It's his username. And I'm oh, whatever. It's him. And I'm just watching yeah. And the whole conversation is you know what? I get it. I get it. Especially, we were watching one for The Lady Widow recently, which is my latest release. If y'all see me looking this way, it's because my husband's sitting here in the front row. And one of the things that I loved is she was like, wow, she was just really hallucinating, huh? And I'm like, yeah. She really was. She was down. She was down and out. That depression was real. And it was just hearing the conversation and the joy that it brings to other people, even if it is like a tough topic, hearing them talk about it and navigate it and, you know, process it and connect it to their own worlds and their own lives and things that they've dealt with. It's just like, oh, I actually did something, huh? That's kind of cool.
It is, isn't it?
It is. It is. But how long are we supposed to talk?
Well, I have one question before y'all wrap
I
it
knew you had a question.
I knew it was
Well,
coming.
I'll let her go since she's, yeah, go ahead.
I would say, like, as an avid, like, Black fantasy reader, one of my favorite things is the world building and, like, being able to still see myself and my culture or other Black cultures in, like, worlds that I couldn't imagine. How do you go about incorporating, like, real life or real culture into, like, these new, completely different worlds? And, like, how do you decide what to keep and what not to keep?
Not only did she have a question, you guys, she had a really deep question.
This is a really serious question, y'all.
Very serious question. Okay, so repeating this for the live stream, the question was paraphrasing. How do we incorporate real world culture into our world building without making it seem crazy or left or forced? Correct? Sure. Okay. Do you want to go first? Because I'm long-winded and I know this.
Okay, so my very short answer, because it won't be long, is that I kind of just write. I really do. I really just write, and then I kind of just see what fits. And if in my soul it feels wrong, then I have to take it out. There's also the benefit of having like people in your corner, like say Chelsea, who will tear your stuff.
It's out of love.
Out of love.
It's out of love.
Out of love. But respectfully, she is not afraid of pointing out when something doesn't make sense or when something is illogical or any kind of variation. Like,
We're gonna drag Tatiana into this too because she's
Tatiana is also just as bad, if not worse. I don't know who's worse between them two. I've dealt with them both, but I don't know who's worse. They're both very honest with their reviews. So it's really just creating the world and then putting the aspects of like our world in it that seems like they fit the puzzle pieces for me.
I would agree to that because it definitely is a does this make sense type thing, right? For me also is I did say I was a little bit radical at the beginning of this, right? So for me, especially with my first like series, The Wrath of the Gods, We Are the Origin and We Are Dying Gods. When I created that world, it was partly from a dream. Audra always gets on me about that. So slight plug, if you haven't seen my interview with the Between the Reads podcast, Audra yells at me for my world building process, right? But the intentional parts of it came from, okay, I live in America, right? And the reality of it is so much of religion is not based in Black culture. And we have our Black churches and we have ways that we navigate, but it's the way we interact with it is very much influenced by the majority makeup, right? So for me, it was very much like, okay, let's just flip this on its head. What if instead of a white man, like a fluffy grandpa in the sky, we have a Black woman and she's the goddess of death and she's also the mother of all life. And you know what, let's just have her have, you know, she's got, I mean, how many has she got? Four. She's got four gods and they're just in love with her. They're obsessed with her. And they all have their own realms and own ways and own culture, right? And so for me, it was kind of like the reality of, again, being Black in America, because on the East Coast, right, that is completely different from being Black on the West Coast. And when you talk, you know, especially when you start talking about rap and music and things like that and colloquialisms. And for me, I went to an HBCU. Shout out to A&T, North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University. I keep pride. We not even gonna start. Don't start with me. but being at an HBCU, you meet so many different people from so many different walks of life. And the first time I heard someone from New York talk, I was like, "What are you saying? That's crazy." And it's just like, for me, I was like, I want to incorporate that into my stories. Like, yeah, everybody is Black unless otherwise stated, but there are different versions of this, you know? So in my book, it's like, yeah, we have a very technologically advanced culture, right? And they've got, you know, dark skin, but also like blonde hair because reasons in the book. Just read it. I promise it makes sense. But they're also very devout, right? And it's just like, what does it look like when you take your religion seriously? But then there are also different cultures in the world where it's just like, you know, they kind of in that in-between space that I like to say is kind of like, you know, when you're like a teenager and you're kind of figuring out your own identity apart from your parents and you have questions, and it's not like, oh, I'm never going to go to church again, you're wrong. But it's also not like, I need to be in church every single Sunday when I have my own car and I have an option of being here, you know? It's kind of exploring what that looks like in different ways for different people. And then also what a world will look like when it's like the question of, is God real, is not a question. It's like, God is real. Now, how are you going to interact with that? For me, it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier about, you know, being able to test the waters and explore things, right? So when I was writing, I was like, okay, let's explore what this looks like. What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it move like? How does that reflect in how people navigate their lives? And, you know, also the idea of, you know, in cultures, people have explanations for everything. And sometimes it makes sense. You know, it's like the creation method. Some people believe in the Big Bang. Some people believe God worked for 6 days and rested on the seventh, right? So in my book, it's like everybody has their own reasons that the gods did things for. Why do we do this? Or like, how do we celebrate important things like getting married or deaths and things like that? So I guess very long-winded, because I told you I was going to be long-winded.
That's okay.
It's the real world is brought in from how we actually create things and know things and understand the world. And then taking those things and putting them in a fantasy aspect and being like, okay, so how does this come about in this world with this lore, and how does it affect these people when being Black isn't something that they have to think about? So yeah.
Good answer.
Was it?
I like it.
Thank you. That's so nice.
So for both of you, what does your writer's world look like if money is not an issue
Oh, let's manifest that.
and you can just be free to create your stories and your projects? What does that look like for each of you?
First thing I'm doing is moving out the country.
Yeah, let me get out of here first.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'll get a nice little place somewhere,
Yeah.
wherever,
Uh-huh.
and maybe become a hermit for the rest of my days. And I will be holed up in a corner in a hole with my laptop, typing away.
Yes.
That's my ideal.
Same brain cell. But no, I guess seriously, yeah, I would, in a perfect world, money is not an object, manifesting. I would move out the country, and this is assuming I have enough money to visit whenever I want to, right? And I would be that cliche movie writer, just sipping a latte in France, looking at the Eiffel Tower, typing my story, and be like, oh, look, there's a car accident. And then just get up and go walk my dog, you know, just living my best life. Maybe not in France, maybe Japan. You know, I like anime.
Japan sounds good.
Yeah, sidetracked. I looked at you, I was about to get sidetracked.
Sorry.
But yeah. Yeah, I would travel a lot. I would definitely be like a nomadic writer, and I would just visit a bunch of different countries, eat a bunch of different food, lots of different food, and just write stories and
Same.
hopefully just bring joy to people's lives, because ultimately that's why I write anyway. I mean, it brings me joy. I think I'm pretty funny. I think I'm pretty talented, but you know, that's ego. but I don't know. I like knowing that people read my stories and they connect to it and they enjoy it and they take something away from it. Either if it's something that they didn't think about prior to picking it up, or if they take away as like, oh, I'm not alone in feeling this way, thinking this way, experiencing this. You know. So I'm taking her with me wherever I go.
Yeah, of course, have to.
Yeah, and Tatiana too. We're just going to drag her around the country. Well, technically, she would be dragging us around the world.
She would. She's the more adventurous one.
She is, yeah. Because we're hermits. We're going to be at the house, and Tatiana's going to be like, oh my God, that was so fun. And then Ben's going to just be there like, yep, I'm here.
Yeah, that happens. You have to leave loved ones there sometimes.
It'll be great. It'll be great. But
I was good.
I was just gonna say, bring it back to the anthology.
oh yes, we did do that.
What were you looking for in the submission process, and what did you learn from it?
Leave it to Ben to ask the hard questions. Okay, so for anybody watching the live stream, the question was, what? Say the first part again.
The submission process. What were you
Submission
looking
process.
for in it, and what did you learn from it?
Okay, so the question was, what were we looking for during the submission process, and what did we learn from it? I'm just gonna have to be honest. During the submissions process, because this is our first one, a lot of learning curves. We were just basically like, it needs to be black, and it needs not be racist, and it needs to be fantasy. Those were the only 3 rules, honestly. There are some more minor ones, like it needs to be between like 5,000 and 7,000 words, but as long as it was a fantasy story written by a black author and it did not feature, touch on, explain, mention racism at all, then we considered it for submission. Things that we learned from this process is to be more specific about what we are asking for. Mostly because for this first anthology, it's just fantasy. We were like, any type of fantasy that you want to write, whether that be romantic fantasy, dystopic fantasy, dark fantasy, horror, whatever, right? We were like, if it works, you want to write it, it brings you joy, send it to us. Our future anthologies will definitely have a theme. So we learned that. We also learned, it's not me, Tatiana, I believe, because we had a conversation about this. Essentially the way it worked, right? And I don't know if this will make sense to anybody, but I'm going to explain it to you anyways in the hopes that it does. We had a two-wave submission process, right? So Tatiana, I love her to death. She's a completionist. And what that means is it does not matter if the submission did not meet the requirements, the very basic requirements that we had. She read it all the way through so that everybody got feedback. I am not. I Marie Kondo everything. If it does not bring me joy, I'm going to stop, right? So one of the things that we learned for sure is I'm going to be the first wave, so I can kind of like weed out some of the people. Like if it's not fantasy, if it's not black, if it doesn't meet the theme, if it's 10,000 words and we ask for 7,000 words, if it's 3,000 words and we ask for 5,000 words, no, thank you for submitting to us, but no, right? So definitely that, but also just giving people time to prepare in advance, because this time we just kind of opened the window like, hey, we're doing it. You got 2 months, get it to us. And that's not how things work in real life. People need time to prepare for it. So yeah. Yes?
In this day and age, do you really think that the writers live by writing? Because, there's AI and so many things that are attached, Do you think that the writers will be affected by these tools and techniques of this day and age? And do you think that the writers will overwhelm these tools?
That is a good question. So for anyone watching on the live stream, the question was, we're in a realm and a time of AI, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, but essentially how will these tools affect writers, and will writers ultimately, outpace the AI, essentially? Is that correct?
I mean, will they survive?
writers survive, or will AI survive?
This is what you have to kill AI to survive. You can't kill it.
I mean, as a writer, I would love if AI writing wasn't something that we had to like consider. But I actually have a colleague who she talks about AI. Like she understands it, and so she works to like help write books to explain how AI works and how it can be used and how it's a tool. And in conversation with her, she made it very clear that it's just like it's like toothpaste. Once it's out of the tube, you can't put it back in. You know. So my perspective on it is, I think it'll go the way of like escalators and stairs. You know, there are going to be escalators, and a lot of people are going to take the escalator, but you're always going to need stairs. You know, and I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to depend on whether or not writers choose to use it as a tool or to be intimidated by it. And I think the word artisanal author has already started popping up. Artisanal? So it's kind of like, okay, like don't get me wrong, don't quote me because I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's kind of like bread, right? Like you have, you know, your nature's own bread that you buy from Food Lion or the grocery store versus like artisanal bread where, you know, you have somebody at a bakery like actually making bread.
Added question, if you don't mind, if you allow me.
Okay, for sure.
You see, in Amazon,
Mhm.
like our writers are having, you know, getting their manuscript written by AI.
Which is crazy.
Oh, this is something that is, you know, I mean, this is how it affects us, the original writers.
Mhm.
I'm a poet and writer too, so I kind of, you know, I'm just navigating this process,
Mhm.
like, you know, to really go through it and then not be affected by it. So it's something that is, you know, it's a close call.
Yeah,
Well,
Can I add something to that?
for sure.
I manage AI systems on supercomputers for NASA.
Oh.
And that's one of the fears that a lot of people have. And I go back to this article that I read a couple years ago when OpenAI first released ChatGPT.
Mhm.
And this lawyer, who is also technical, had a very good point. It was poignant. He said, AI is not going to replace you as an attorney.
Right.
The attorney that understands AI is going to replace you as an attorney.
Mhm.
So it's like you can, you know, it's an analogy that I use sometimes when I'm trying to teach younger people Linux and systems engineering. I said when it first came out, there were a lot of people that resisted and said, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to learn this. And I equated it to that person that's standing at the base of the tsunami, shaking his fist in anger at the tsunami. And I was like, the smart person sees the tsunami coming, grabs his surfboard,
Mhm.
and rides the crest of success. The dummy sits at the bottom of the wave, shakes his fist and defiance and gets crushed. So I don't think that AI, especially in the direction that it's going, will ever be able to replace the creative process
Mhm.
that authors and artists and artisans
Mhm.
are capable of. I think it just will allow, especially in the technical fields,
Mhm.
people to work faster and more efficiently.
I
Even as
agree.
an author, I've read where some authors, creatives, say that I had a writing block.
Mhm.
And I went to the chatbot and I said, I'm having a writing block and I'm thinking about this particular aspect of my story. And very, sometimes creepily, this machine will come back and say, how about this direction? Have you thought about this?
And I guess that's where I get a little iffy about it, because that's not because I like talking to people, and a large part of what I believe in is having community as an author, no matter what stage of your authoring process you're at. Because like you said, you get writer's blocks and there are things that you can't do alone. And I guess for me, I don't know if it's because I'm old, I don't know if I'm at that point in my life, but I'm just kind of like, I have people, so I'm like, hey, can we hop on a call? Can we bounce ideas around? And I personally like the organic back and forth, because I've tried it. I'm not gonna like pretend like, no, AI is bad, down with the AI. Like, I'm not that person. I've tried it for my creative process because, like you said, it's a tool and it's here. It's not going anywhere. And I think as an author, part of that is understanding how this tool can aid your process instead of replacing your process. I think when we get to the point where people are trying to write entire books or get the AI to write entire books or scenes or novels, I think that's when we start to kind of lose the plot a little bit. But I think if it's aiding you, like you said, helping with coming up with ideas or working through something, or like even I use AI, I have per writing aid, and it goes through and it's like, hey, that you can use a stronger word, or you're using a passive voice here, or grammar. Like a lot of the things is, I mean, it's very base level AI, but it can also summarize your scene and be like, what is it about? And I think there's benefit to that as well. So I think it depends on how you use the tool, but I think there's also a human element that I personally wouldn't want the AI to replace, because I think that is what grows your community. That's what helps you grow as an author, not bouncing ideas around with the AI, but having someone else who thinks completely different from you, who has different experiences than you. And I don't know, it's probably just paranoia in my mind, but I'm like, I know that if I'm talking to Law, I know that if she gives me an idea, I don't have to worry about it being copyrighted, or if it's taken, where it's coming from. She's unhinged. I'm unhinged. If we get together, we're just going to come up with something that makes no sense. And I appreciate that. But I also know that it's fun, especially when we get wine involved. And Tatiana,
Yes, good times.
it's good times. But I also know that that's a privilege that I have, because I do have a community, and I do have someone that I can message at like 3 a.m. and be like, hey, you up? Like, do you have a second? And she'll be like, yes, if she's awake, right? But I think also, if you are trying to do this on your own, or you're new to it, or you don't have that community, I do think there's benefit in the AI. Like I said, it just depends on how you use it. But I think there are, like as with everything, I think there are people who abuse the technology, and I think there are people who will use the technology. And you kind of have to decide where you're going to fall with that. But I don't think it's evil, personally.
I think it's like nuclear power or nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Any tool can be turned.
It's a tool.
I mean, enough water will kill you,
A
so.
hammer can build a house. Can also bludgeon your head in.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just, I think that people need to adapt to the tools.
It's a tool.
Exactly.
Just remember, it's a tool. So, and you use the word artisanal, which means that we have bread that have a creative aspect. You can have different types of bread, but it's all bread.
It's all bread at the end of the day.
But how do you use the tool?
Yeah, and some people have a preference. Some people are going to go to the bakery, and they're gonna wait in line, and they're gonna place their orders. And when they out of flour, they're just gonna have to wait for them to get more flour. And then some people, they're gonna go pick up that $2 loaf from Food Lion and keep it moving and make a sandwich. I think there's space for both, and I don't think one will ever fully replace the other. You need both. I think having the other is what gives value to the whichever one you're looking at.
I think the most important thing for writers themselves is just stay true to themselves in the process. Like, don't fall too far into the AI thing if that's not what you as a person want. And really, truly dig deep within yourself, and that will shine through the work, and people will respond to that. People can feel the soul of the writer in the story. When it's AI, people can always point out when it's AI. People always say that, oh, it's AI, there's no soul to this, blah, blah, blah. You hear it all the time. But when it's written by a person who truly cares about the work that they're putting out and what they're producing and the ideas that they're creating, and that reads, you can feel that in the story. So I think that's in itself important for people or writers to remember.
Yeah, and I will say that's free writing advice. Whatever you do, whatever you put out, just make sure that it's something that you are proud to put your name on, because people are going to associate it with you and your career and what you stand for. And it's just like, if you want to put out high quality work, then make sure that whatever tools you use, you are putting out something that you're like, this is me. I did this. This is mine. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I wrote this. We did this. This is ours. We're proud of it,
Sometimes we get hyped over new terms, new and improved. AI is not new. It's been around for eons. It was called plagiarism. We could look up and steal stuff for. Am I lying?
Yeah, that's
We've always used. We chose to be true to ourselves, and not. Some of us didn't go that route. So we have a new term, AI, like it's something new, and no, it's not new and improved. We can always steal and be nefarious and be,
Mhm.
but it's a tool. How you use something can be positive or negative, like the gentleman said.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to say this quick disclaimer for the internet. We were talking about using AI for like writing tools. We are not talking about art AI.
Yes, yes.
Very much anti-art
Very
AI.
different subject. Art AI is not
Not
it.
the same.
Not it, no.
But for writing as a tool, then yeah, we support that.
Agreed.
Yeah. But I think that's it for us for the most part. So I guess quick sign off. If you guys have never seen me before, hi, my name is Chelsea. I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice. I run Written in Melanin LLC, which includes a podcast and YouTube channel of the same name. I'm also the founder of the Melanin Library, which is an online database of books written by Black authors. I have several books out. I have a romance novella called Keeping Promises. I have a trilogy that I'm super proud of called The Wrath of the Gods. The first two books, We Are the Origin and We Are Dying Gods, are already out in the world. The third book is coming out October of this year. I also released a space novella early this year on January 28th. It is out in the world as well. It's about a grieving widow who goes to space to become an intergalactic bounty hunter to avenge the murder of her husband. The second book in that is also coming out later this year, and I also am a contributing editor to Magic in the Melanin, a Black fantasy anthology, which is 14 short stories collected to show off Black fantasy that comes with full-page artwork and an audiobook as well. I mean, you gotta pay for those things, but they exist. And if you guys are interested in interacting with me or following me, you can find me online anywhere at C as in Chelsea, Lockhart Write, WRITE. I'm on all the platforms except the one with the bird because it's not even a bird anymore.
It's not a bird anymore.
I'm not on X, so I don't do that. But yeah, and you can also find me at melanin_library. And if you'd like to support anything that I do, you can go to melaninlibrary.com and you can join our Patreon or you can donate to make sure that it remains a free resource for everyone who wants to read and support Black authors. That is my spiel. Thank you guys for being here. Where was this bookseller? So come through if you're in the Petersburg area. It's amazing. It's gorgeous in here. They have books. They have so many Black books and it's amazing and they support the community. Like, I'm not just saying that because I'm here. Like, I don't live here in Virginia, you guys. I drove here to be here. So check that out. Okay, I'm done.
It was a far drive too. Okay, so I won't be as long-winded, but I am La Purvis. I am the writer of queer Black fantasy romance stories. I am a contributing editor of the Melanin anthology, Melanin the Magic anthology. It's beautiful right here. Get your copy, make sure.
My Farrah Fawcett.
I also am going to be publishing my debut novel, May Chaos Reign Over You, later this year. More info on that coming soon. Keep an eye out if you want to know. Where you can follow me anywhere on social media at Purvis Writes. It's just Purvis Writes. That's it. No other exclamations or any kind of markings like that. And that's anywhere except for I'm also not on the Bird. That's not a Bird app. And and I think that's it.
Yeah, and also, if you've been watching this and you like the sweatshirt, we also have that available for sale on the Melanin Library website, as well as other merch like cups and t-shirts and jackets. There's also some in the audience if you'd like to see some of the other ones. I hate that for you guys who are on the live stream, but... Okay.
Tatiana's in the stream, by the way.
Hi, Tatiana!
Hi, Tatiana!
Oh, so she's not here, so I'm going to plug her stuff as well. Tatiana OB is an author writing badass characters slaying dragons.
Yeah.
Hey, look at me knowing the slogan.
Yes.
She has her duology, Forging of Age duology out. It is called Bones to the Wind and Dragging Your Bones. Both of them, I've actually read them. And for those of you who don't know me, I don't read books all the way to the end. So I read both of them. I read them in a weekend. They are fantastic. She also has a novella out called Sister Samurai, which is Afro Samurai meets, what is it? It's great.
It's fantastic. That's all I know.
It's wonderful.
Really
And the second book for her novella series is also coming out pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good time to get into it. There's just so much Black fantasy around. I love that for you guys.
I know.
I love that.
Don't miss out.
So And you can check her out at Tatiana OB, which is obey.com. And you can follow her online at Obey the Author, pretty much anywhere except for the Bird app that's not a Bird app. So yeah, slight plug for Tatiana. That's it.
That's it.
I think we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah.